Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about Lori Alexander, aka the Transformed Wife. If you remember, a couple of videos back I talked about I was going to be discussing biblical gender roles and the Transformed Wife as new content on my channel. So yesterday as I was scrolling through Twitter, I came across a post by Lori Alexander in which she was trying to bash Mr. Atheist, who is a YouTuber that I follow on YouTube and is one of the people that introduced me to the Transformed Wife. Actually, it was between Mr. Atheist and Rachel Oates who actually introduced me to this wonderful individual. Okay, now that I said that without dying, let's move on. So, the Transformed Wife tweeted out, "A Mr. Atheist has been taking me to task about my YouTube videos. He must not understand that I am Mrs. Christian, so we will have nothing, all capital letters, in common since we are polar opposites." And Mr. Atheist actually replied to that, but it's like several replies down because a lot of people were going back and forth. But I actually replied to her as well and stated, "I will be taking on your blog post on my YouTube channel very soon. Your views are very dangerous to women. I'm so glad I was able to get away from these type of religious views, and hopefully I can help people the way I was." Lori's post right now is setting at 5 retweets and 89 likes. My post is setting at 59 likes. So, moving on from that, I do have one of her blogs pulled up and ready to review. So, let's look at it. So, we're going to be looking at the Transformed Wife blog today, and the post is called, "Does Birth Control Help the Poor?" Well, I'll give you one idea on where Lori stands on this. But let's just look at her blog. So, it says, "Inevitably, when a discussion comes up about birth control and the evil roots behind it, women will bring up generations in time past when birth control didn't exist, when poverty was extreme and families were large. Isn't birth control a great invention to help prevent this happening?" Okay, so let's just talk about that for 1 second. Yes, in times past, families were large. My father actually comes from one of 11 children. Is that something that most families aspire to anymore? No, it is not, unless you're one of these like extreme families like the Duggars. Most families do not aspire to be a large family any longer. I never wanted children when I was smaller. Yes, I have children and I do love my children and I would never change anything about that. But when I was a child growing up, I never aspired to be a mother. And that was what I settled upon. Actually, I was on birth control when I conceived my daughter. I did not want to be a parent. I was 19 years old. I was in college. I had no aspirations toward motherhood. But things happened and my daughter was born. Did I want to change that at that point? No. I took on that task and I was a mother. But for you to start off by saying that that was such a horrible thing to come about is just ridiculous to me. I'm angry at her because I've already read this blog, and seeing where she's going with this already makes me angry because this woman is insane. Super, super insane. But I'm going to pull it back. We're pulling it back. She goes into some responses from women in the chat room that all that is necessary to allow women to space children, such as for health purposes, is some basic knowledge on how their bodies work, that much is that much is a good thing. We don't need birth control to keep women from having a baby every single year so that she doesn't destroy her health. Most women are not that fertile anyway. Lie. Oh my God, that is such a lie. So let me explain that to you. One, there are one of my close friends. I actually had custody of her children for a short period of time. They lived with me. Those children are 13 months apart. Do the math. She went back for her 6-week checkup after having given birth to her oldest daughter, and she was pregnant with her youngest daughter. Some of my aunts and uncles are literally that close in age. So no, people are that fertile. My own children are 19 months apart. Some people are that fertile. Just putting it out there. And basic knowledge about their bodies. Yes, some people have basic knowledge about their bodies. But then there are also stupid decisions because people make dumb decisions. And also, let me remind you of something, Lori Alexander, that you have said yourself. So I'm speaking directly to you. That a woman herself cannot decide not to sleep with her husband. So if her husband decides that he wants sex, that is not rape. Remember? That came out of your mouth. Because if she doesn't want to she doesn't want her husband to go to jail, does she? That came out of your mouth. So if she's saying, no, I can't have sex on these days because I could end up pregnant, but he decides that he wants to have sex on those days and ends up having sex with her and she ends up pregnant, it's not by her decision that she ended up pregnant. It's by the marital rape that occurred that she ended up pregnant. So that is on you because you preach that that is not rape. But moving on. Most women are not that fertile anyway, and if they are, a little knowledge can help them be good stewards of their bodies. No, because remember, once they're married, they have no decision-making powers because obviously men are up here and women are down here, so whatever the man decides is what happens. Oh, anyway. What we don't need is to swing to the opposite extreme that we have now where children are viewed as burdens rather than blessings and most people have only one or two, and the normal state is to try to prevent sex from producing children. Well, guess what? I stopped at 2. I stopped at 2 because my oldest child had cerebral palsy. My oldest child had cerebral palsy because my body does not go into labor on its own. My body can get pregnant, my body can carry a child, but my body will not go into labor on its own. I have to be medically put into labor. But, that's because I should just know my body and, God works in mysterious ways, right? No, my body can make a baby, it can carry a baby, but it can't push the baby out on its own. On time. My daughter was a month past her due date. I have to be medically put into labor. And once I'm put into labor, I can push a child out. I just can't get to that point where my body goes, okay, time for the baby to pop out. No. So I stopped at 2. I didn't want to do that to another child. I had my daughter. When I explained the process, when I got pregnant with my son, to my new doctor, they decided to induce my labor on the day he was supposed to be born. He's a perfectly healthy child. But I didn't want to do that to another child. Also, I didn't want another child to go through the loss of a sibling like my son had to. I buried my daughter 4 years ago. It was enough of a burden for one child to have to lose a sibling. Why do I want to make multiple children have to lose that sibling? Why would I want to do that? That is retarded, okay? What you are teaching is just to keep popping out babies and popping out babies. All for what? Oh yeah, because God needs an army. Why does God need an army? Your very omniscient, omnipresent, wonderful Lord shouldn't need an army. That sounds like a battle. Why does he need to battle? He should be winning everybody over with love. Moving on. I'm getting very angry. Then I would point out that the Israelites kept having babies when they were slaves in Egypt and when they were captive in Babylon. In fact, God told them to have children. Being poor isn't a standard for using birth control. Okay, let me point this out to you just in case you don't understand. Birth control was not available in these times that you're speaking of. Just 1960s was when birth control became readily available to people. I'm sure if it was readily available to the slaves in Egypt or the slaves in Babylon or even the slaves in the southern United States, to keep their children from being taken from them and sold on blocks, they would have done it. But, moving on. Then she goes into 4 points about birth control. So her first point about birth control is negative health effects of birth control are proven. And then starts off with the temple of God. Your body is a temple of God. Okay, well, you're talking about negative health effects of birth control. What about the negative effects of multiple births? How about, when you have gestational diabetes or high blood pressure during pregnancy or, these high-risk pregnancies that happen with people that have multiple babies. Look at the Duggars. Their last few children were high-risk pregnancies, and she kept having babies after some of those kids were being hospitalized or she was miscarrying early or even later into pregnancy. Isn't that dangerous? Isn't that putting a kid in danger? Isn't that putting her in danger? Isn't that dishonoring her godly temple? Moving on. Number 2. Women do not truly understand the purpose of having children. So, we have children and raise them up to fear the Lord so that they can do God's work in the world and build up his kingdom. Therefore, the more children you have, the bigger God's army, and in this immoral society, we need more godly people, not less. So you're just having children to make little God soldiers? Isn't that the same thing that people get pissed off at over in Korea and over down in Mexico and over in Israel when they're talking about the mandatory military service that children have to do? Isn't that the same type of mentality that you're talking about? This mandatory thing? And why do you want to raise your children to fear something? I don't want my kid to be afraid of anything. I don't want my kid to be afraid of a damn thing. I want him to grow up and be the strongest person he can be. He has already lived through enough. Why do I want him to fear somebody he is supposed to love? That sounds stupid. Moving on though. Number 3, since God is in charge of opening and closing wombs, a woman should leave it up to him to decide when she's done having children, not the opinions of man. Submit it to God. No. Because you've got kids that are starting their periods, which means that they can start having children. You have children as small as 8 and 9 years old that are starting to have their periods. Does that mean they should start popping out babies now? No, that is stupid. That is ridiculous. Also, there are women that are still having their periods up until they're like 45 or 50. But that also puts their health at risk and the baby's health at risk. Why should they still be popping out kids into that age? That, again, is stupid. Plus, factor in their age, they're probably not going to live. If they have a baby when they're 45, they're probably not going to live to see that kid hit 18. So, who's going to raise that kid? You are saying stupid stuff. This is stupid. So a kid that's, say, 8 years old when she gets her first period should start popping out kids then. Say that she started at 8 and goes into menopause at 45. She should start having kids at 8 and stop having kids when she goes into menopause at 45. Factoring in she could have a kid every 9 months. She should have kids. She should have how many kids? I mean, come on. You're saying stupid, and I mean stupid stuff. This is ridiculous. This is like one of the dumbest things I have ever heard or read or seen in my life. And I have seen and read and heard some stupid stuff in my life. You are talking about literal children starting to have children. That is the problem with America, is children having children, and you are preaching to children to have children. Moving on. Then she says, number 4. Don't they like to say, my body, my choice? But yet they like to tell other women when to stop having babies. Well, her womb is her choice, and it's none of their business. Here's my thing, and I'm going to put it out here. If you want to have 5 billion babies, have 5 billion babies, but have the number of babies that you can support. Have the number of babies that your family can support on your own, and I don't have to support with my taxes. That's the reason why I had to. I could have those 2 because I could support those 2. I didn't have any more because I couldn't support those 2. And guess what? There were several years in there that I was a single mother. I was a single mother without a job that supported those kids without any government assistance. So manage that one on your own. Now, a lot of these larger families, or these people that are popping out 5, 6, 7, 8 kids, are getting government assistance, which means my tax dollars are going to pay for their kids. Why do I have to support your baby making factory? No, I don't want to. I want to support my family. I don't want to support you laying up and having 20 different kids and then you saying, well, God's will be done. No, I don't care. Your God doesn't factor into my lifestyle. So, yeah, if you can have 20 kids and you can support 20 kids, then go ahead and support those 20 kids. I may think you're a moron, but go ahead and do it. But once you get to the point where you can't support your kids and you're having to get government assistance or ask for handouts, that's when I'm going to say, now it's time for you to stop. And yeah, at that point, once you have to ask for assistance to support your family, it no longer becomes your choice because you're asking for everybody else to support your family. So yeah, no longer your choice because you're asking for everybody else's assistance. Then she moves on to the point of her blog that really angers me. And if you thought I was angry now, you're really fixing to see me angry. Because she moves on and she says, children don't make people poor. Really? Because have you seen how expensive it is to raise children? Send your children to public school sometime. You would think it's a private school setting. Because you have to buy school supplies and school clothes. Then, within the first month of school, you got to buy several other things. Now my kid's going into junior high this year. I have to buy a locker. He's going to be in band, so I have to buy a trumpet. He's going to be playing the trumpet, so I've got to buy him a locker. Got to buy his trumpet. I've got to buy school supplies, school clothes. Then there's all kinds of beginning of the year stuff that they want you to pay for. School shirt, this, school pride, whatever. You got to pay for all that stuff. Then they hit you up about Christmas time when you're already trying to buy Christmas for your family. Then they hit you up at Christmas time for some stuff. Then when you come back from Christmas, then they're hitting you up for some more stuff. Then there's the end of the year stuff that they're hitting you up for. They're hitting you up all the time. But it says children don't make people poor. They make us rich in what truly matters, family and relationships. Now, yes, my children have made me into a different person than what I used to be. I give you that. It says large families of old lived in small homes. As long as their basic needs were met and they had a loving mother and father, there was joy in the home. Well, let me tell you a story. Like I said at the beginning of this, my dad came from one of 11 children. My dad was one of 11 children. And his mother and father were together. And yes, my dad's got some funny stories about when he was growing up and all of that stuff. But my dad's also got some very horrific stories from when he was growing up. Yes, they lived in tiny houses. I've seen some of the houses my dad grew up in. But it wasn't always good times, and no, their needs were not always met. You know, it's hard to meet the needs of 11 kids when there's only one person working. And my grandfather worked as a crane operator. So cranes don't run when it's raining outside, or when it's too muddy for the crane, or when it's, hurricane force winds or whatever. They couldn't get proper medical attention for some things. They couldn't get, several of the things that they probably needed. They could not get. But you can't say that just because their basic needs are met, that there was love in the home. No, yeah, my grandmother gave those kids all the love that they needed. My grandfather did not. At all. He was a very selfish person. And some of my uncles took after him and were very selfish people. And some of my cousins have taken after their fathers and are very selfish people. It's a vicious cycle. What you see, you model. And what you model, your kids will model. Luckily, my father was very much like his mother. And so he modeled that for me, and then I modeled that for my kids, and then my kids will model that for their kids. Because my dad has a tremendous work ethic, I have a tremendous work ethic, so my son has a tremendous work ethic. But not everybody is like that. So you can't just say that these large families were the model of perfect home and perfect love, because not all of them were that way. So you can't just make these broad general statements and say that modern families that are smaller, that have these big homes, which is the next thing she says. Now many people live in large homes with small families. Mothers are away at work all day. Divorce rates are way too high. Children are being raised by strangers, and there's not much joy in the home. Well, guess what? My family's a small family. We don't live in a large home, and my child is not being raised by strangers. There's a lot of love in this home. When I am away at work, because yes, I have to work. Yes, I have to help support my family. Just like most modern families, it takes 2 incomes to make it in this day and age because things are so expensive. Things like rent and mortgage are higher. Vehicle payments are higher. Just the cost of living is much higher than it used to be. Give you an example. Me and my husband were watching TV the other day, and a Shelby GT 500 was $4,900. $4,900 brand new for a Shelby GT 500 in 1969. I'm paying $25 grand for a used truck that I'm driving currently. Do you understand the math, Lori Alexander? Do you understand how expensive living is? You can't just shut off the world and live in the 1950s anymore. But when I'm at work, and my husband's at work, my son is not raised by strangers. He is raised by his grandparents, or he comes home to his mother and his stepfather, who love him just as much as his grandparents do. So yes, he's raised by a loving family. And in my small house with my small family, there's just as much love in it as there were in these quote-unquote large families in small homes. So the next time you want to paint a broad picture with your narrow mind, maybe you should do some more research. Maybe you should understand your topic, and maybe you should get out of your Bible and look at the world. So Lori Alexander, the next time you want to do something of this nature, maybe talk to some people. Maybe understand the world around you and get out of your 1950s view. Every so often, it might help you. So then she ends her nice little blog with, "It is not easy to bear and raise children, but they are blessings from God, and happy is the man who has a quiver full, who can argue with God." Well, guess what? I could argue with him all day long. I would if he existed. I do agree that it is not easy to bear or raise children. My children my daughter was a blessing to me, and my son is a blessing to me, and I am thankful to have all the memories that I have with my daughter and all the memories that I have with my son. And I look forward to all the memories that I will have with my son in the years to come. And no, it is not an easy task to raise children. I never say it is. And no, it is not easy to bear children. It is hard on your body. I do not tell people to have and keep having children. Have the number of children that you are comfortable with having and that you can raise on your own without asking for help. That is the number of children you should have. Do not fall for this Christian hogwash about keep having children and that your body will only have the number of children that it can have. No, people are that fertile to have a child every 9 months. Don't let anybody fool you with that nonsense. So, if you need birth control, there are birth control options available. If you need doctor interventions, there are doctors there to help you. Do not fall for this Christian hogwash. Do not do it. And with all that said, I'm going to close out here, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you would like, you can look in the description box down below. My Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and email are all linked down below. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and ring that bell next to it so that you're always notified of my uploads. And with that, guys, I'm going to close out. Bye for now.